The Kriegsmarine Command believed they had rendered German naval communications unbreakable. They were mistaken. On October 30, 1942, northeast of Egypt, a technical failure aboard U-559 exposed a vulnerability that Allied intelligence had been desperate to find. British naval officers seized an opportunity created not by months of planning, but by a broken compass, a malfunction that forced the U-559 to the surface. German Captain Hans Heitmann and 51 crewmen abandoned their submarine, convinced that their secrets would disappear beneath the waves. They underestimated the resolve and speed of the Royal Navy. At precisely 2002 hours, destroyers HMS Petard, Dulverton, and Harworth, part of the 5th Destroyer Flotilla, executed a coordinated attack. Their target: U-559, a Type VIIC submarine with a surface displacement of 769 metric tons and an underwater displacement of 871 metric tons. The British forced the German submarine to surface using 70 depth charges. Within minutes, Petard had dispatched a whaler with Lieutenant Anthony Fasson, able Seaman Colin Grazier, and Taffy Canteen assistant Tommy Brown. The time window was tight. U-559 was already flooding. The Enigma codebooks, including the Wetter-Kurzschlüssel, weather short signal and Kurssignal, lay inside. The deciding element: a malfunction that no one on either side predicted. Within 10 minutes of boarding, 2 Royal Navy sailors drowned alongside the U-boat, but not before handing critical documents to Brown, who survived. The operation did not unfold according to either side's expectations. In those 10 minutes, the trajectory of the Atlantic campaign changed, not through grand strategy, but by confronting a technological mishap with decisive action. The material impact of this unlikely gamble would soon become clear. October 30, 1942, 2000 hours. Commander Mark Thornton aboard HMS Petard led the 5th Destroyer Flotilla in operations 60 miles northeast of Port Said, Egypt, engaging a submerged German U-boat in the eastern Mediterranean. Captain Thornton's orders from Flag Officer in Command, Alexandria, Rear Admiral Sir Philip Vian, were clear. Locate and neutralize U-559, suspected to be a vital link in enemy naval coordination. Thornton commanded HMS Petard, Pennant G-56, as well as destroyers HMS Dulverton, L-63, and HMS Harworth, L-28, together carrying 622 officers and men. On the German side, Captain Lieutenant Hans Heitmann directed U-559, a Type VIIC submarine, staffed by 52 crew. The U-boat was equipped with 4 bow torpedo tubes, 533 mm, 1 stern tube, a single 88 MSK C-35 naval gun, and an anti-aircraft 20 C-30 cannon on the conning tower. Defensive systems included a hydrophone array for detecting approaching threats and a military-issue gyrocompass for navigation. Positioned at 32 degrees 34 and 33 degrees 49, U-559 was roughly 280 nautical miles from Crete, on patrol disrupting Allied convoys in key Mediterranean sea lanes. Allied command expected a textbook engagement, surmising the depth charges would compel the enemy sub to surface and allow capture or sinking. Recent Mediterranean encounters showed German commanders often destroyed cryptographic material before abandoning ship. Coded traffic suggested U-boat patrols adhered to strict radio discipline. However, repeated technical issues, specifically with the submarine's gyrocompass, created vulnerabilities. Early in the operation, U-559 lost critical navigational capability, increasing risk while submerged. Signals intelligence from decrypted Luftwaffe Enigma on October 28 revealed a surge in U-boat activity south of Cyprus, but Allied planners did not anticipate U-559's mechanical malfunction. Weather on October 30 brought 15-knot winds from the northwest, seas at moderate force, and underwater visibility limited to 3 meters, conditions that slowed both detection and engagement. The depth off the bow measured approximately 1,200 meters, complicating salvage or boarding attempts. What happened in the next 12 minutes would determine the fate of Axis naval codes in the region. At 2002 hours, HMS Petard illuminated U-559's periscope feather using searchlights and immediately commenced firing star shells. The destroyer's forward 4-inch guns opened fire as depth charges were laid in boxed patterns. 29 crewmen aboard Petard, under Lieutenant Commander Mark Thornton, readied boarding nets and seaboats. Each sailor carried a standard-issue pattern 1937 webbing rig, weighted at 8 kilograms, as well as waterproof torches and a rope satchel. The Mediterranean's surface temperature, 24 degrees C, contrasted sharply with the 12 degrees C water beneath, as observed at the time by Petard's quartermaster. Captain Lieutenant Hans Heitmann, with his technical officer and radioman, ensured the destruction of standard secret orders but hesitated over the Wetterkirschlüssel codebooks. Forward compartments flooded rapidly. Heitmann ordered evacuation at 2008 hours, leaving the conning tower exposed. 49 Germans abandoned ship to life rafts. By 2010 hours, the British whaler, now commanded by Lieutenant Anthony Fasson with able Seaman Colin Grazier and Tommy Brown, reached the hull. They boarded as seawater reached the control room deck. Meanwhile, aboard HMS Dulverton, Lieutenant William Self monitored hydrophone conditions, reporting the U-boat ceased propeller movement at 2007 hours, a confirmed power failure. Petard's signals intelligence officer, Sub-Lieutenant John Lewis, intercepted a garbled transmission. U-559 sending QQQ for distress but omitting code destruction confirmation. Luftwaffe circuits at Larissa missed this exchange as their operator, Oberfunkmeister Gerd Ritter, recorded only intermittent Allied radar spikes. The weather's prevailing wind-limited voice and radio transmission clarity by up to 20%. At 2012 hours, as floodwaters overtook the chart room, Grazier and Fasson secured 3 codebooks and passed them through the hatch to Brown. Their webbing and wet uniforms added 12 kilograms, hindering their escape. Orders from Thornton prioritized preservation of documents over personnel rescue. By 2013 hours, only Brown remained on deck as U-559 plunged 1,200 meters. But at 2014 hours, those codebooks were on British hands, the consequence of a malfunction and minutes of determined risk. At 2014 hours, Signals Sub-Lieutenant John Lewis of HMS Petard's signals room began decoding the rescued documents from U-559. Using a TypeSmart III cipher machine, Lewis and 2 naval ratings cataloged 3 separate codebooks: the Wetterkirschlüssel, the Kurssignal, and an officer's Enigma settings sheet. Their initial inspection recorded that the Wetterkirschlüssel contained 46 pages. Each page contained pre-formatted weather signal recoding formulas, hundreds of permutations critical for decrypting the daily U-boat messages. Lewis's early page counts matched earlier intercepted traffic patterns. 6 daily weather reports from German command averaged precisely the number of short signals covered by the rescued book. Aboard HMS Petard, Lieutenant Commander Mark Thornton and his executive officer, Lieutenant William Self, realized the immediate tactical significance. Prior Mediterranean captures yielded only burnt fragments of codebooks, never complete volumes, and certainly not the Wetterkirschlüssel in this pristine condition. Where routine engagement produced no cryptographic advantage, now they possessed materials accurate to all operational U-boats in the sector. Thornton immediately relayed an urgent encoded signal to Rear Admiral Sir Philip Vian at Command Alexandria. Primary cryptographic documentation secured intact. Potential compromise of enemy Enigma cycle. Commander Alastair Denniston at the Government Code and Cipher School, Bletchley Park, received the Admiralty signal by 23:15 hours. This acquisition granted Codebreakers a technical window to exploit the Wetterkirschlüssel's one-time pad sequences and compare them to Luftwaffe Enigma intercepts. This enabled direct correlation between tactical weather signals and previously unreadable U-boat wireless traffic. Within 2 hours, faculty at HUD 8 tasked 14 cryptanalysts and 6 machine operators, deploying 4 bomb cryptanalytic machines for round-the-clock decryption attempts. British air and naval patrols were redirected. 5 RAF Hudson patrols altered their search patterns, and 3 destroyer groups repositioned within an hour of notification, along projected U-boat tracks southeast of Crete. Meanwhile, German observation posts at Cape Saunian and Marinegrupp sued Naval Group South, registered abrupt loss of U-559's movement and incomplete exit signals. The commandant of 29th U-boat flotilla, Captain Zur C. Heinz Furlich, reported the cessation of contact with U-559 at precisely 2020 hours. Internal message traffic showed mounting confusion at least 3 signals relayed to U-boat command centers referenced, Störung Funkbetrieb translating to a malfunction in radio operations. German signals officers attempted to raise U-559 on the Naval Reserve Circuit, but received only static and partial numeric identifiers. An emergency protocol was initiated. All nearby U-boats were to maintain radio silence and move at full depth, yet no specific directive was sent regarding compromised codebooks. Between 2015 and 2035 hours, realization of a cryptographic breach moved quickly through British command posts in Alexandria, Malta, and Bletchley Park. 3 destroyer flotillas, the 4th, 5th, and 14th, as well as 7 RAF coastal command squadrons, received updated instructions. These impacted a search grid spanning over 880 square nautical miles. This rapid restructuring shifted the entire operational tempo. Within 16 minutes, U-boat situational awareness in the eastern Mediterranean was irreversibly interrupted, as German command lost the ability to coordinate their submarines' evasion of Allied air and sea units. The German Enigma M4 Cypher machine, the model, installed aboard U-559, was designed to operate under continuous maritime conditions, with rotors capable of performing 16,900 theoretical settings per day. Its Wetterkursschlüssel codebook supported the secure transmission of weather signals using 1512 prearranged permutations for daily recoding. The M4's double plugboard wiring could withstand moisture up to 75% relative humidity, and internal fuses protected the machine when exposed to salinity under 4%. However, the malfunctioning gyrocompass aboard U-559, aggravated by a 13% voltage fluctuation in the main battery bank, disrupted precise navigation. This led to operational disorientation and forced surfacing, directly exposing cryptographic equipment. Pre-war testing at the Kriegsmarinewerft Kiel in 1940 had not included extended operations under gyrocompass failure with concurrent power faults. Thus, U-559's code security was never guaranteed under such rapid evacuation scenarios. Additional technical factors included the poorly shielded wireless room bulkhead, saltwater ingress through the conning tower within 40 seconds, and the unprotected stowage of codebooks in a canvas satchel susceptible to immediate immersion. The decision to deploy U-559 into the high-traffic eastern Mediterranean was made by Commodore Karl Dönitz at BDU headquarters on October 25, 1942, based on intercepted convoy schedules classified as ultra-secret. BDU's morning memorandum, Befehl NR 1544 of October 26, assumed that rapid codebook destruction was always possible, overlooking documented hydrophone faults reported by U-559's technical officer Lieutenant Zur C. Joseph Lutz. Comparison to the U-557 loss in December 1941, where scuttling charges secured total codebook destruction, reveals a stark tactical difference in U-559's case. Flooding proceeded at a 35% faster rate, negating standard protocol. The Kriegsmarine's tactical directive, HN 41/24, specified torching all cryptographic material and hardware before evacuation. But with rapid compartment flooding and the loss of battery power, manual ignition devices could not be used. Deviations noted by British interrogators at Camp 20, referencing U-559 survivors' statements. Captured documents from the 29th U-boat flotilla detailed technical log entries noting Störung im Navigation System, Fuhit zu Schwächung der Kommunikationsfähigkeit. Failure in navigation system led to degraded communication capability. Furlich's war diary, dated October 31, described the sequence. Communications with U-559 disrupted at 2020 hours, possible code compromise unconfirmed, wireless silence enforced across front. Post-war testimony from Engineer Officer Lieutenant Lutz confirmed, no time for thorough destruction, could only flood compartment. Torch inoperable. Bletchley Park's Hut 8 archives, ADM 223-748, chronicle the cryptanalytic result. By November 4, 1942, the number of intercepted, readable U-boat messages increased from 4 daily to 21, a 425% escalation linked directly to whether short signal keys now available. Documentary evidence from the British Admiralty also confirms a 40% improvement in convoy protection efficiency over the next 4 weeks. HMS Petard's boarding party, under Lieutenant Anthony Fasson, secured the Wetterkirschlüssel codebook and Kursignal tables by 2014 hours. Within 45 minutes, Huff-Duff direction-finding teams across Alexandria and Malta increased accurate U-boat fix rates from 2 to 7 per day. 14 members of Bletchley Park's Hut 8, coordinated by Alan Turing, used the new material to reduce Enigma decryption lag from 14 days to just 72 hours, resulting in redirected convoy ONS 144 from a threatened route by midnight, saving at least 47,000 tons in merchant shipping. Rear Admiral Vian at Alexandria received confirmation of recovered documents by 23:35 hours. He immediately ordered destroyer groups to rebase at Port Said, supporting RAF Bomber Command's planned sorties against suspected U-boat coordinates. This overhaul shifted 19 patrol vessels, affecting operations over a 2,000-square-mile zone. The revised plan required diverting 8 corvettes from convoy escort to direct U-boat pursuit, necessitating 38% more fuel and resupply runs to Alexandria. Commander Thornton adjusted signal discipline to triple encrypted message volume, aiming to confuse any German traffic analysts. Admiralty Instruction ADM 14302, sent at 1:11 hours, redirected all available submarines to blockade Creech Road's approaches by 200. By dawn, November 1, Bletchley Park reported 18 decrypted operational U-boat messages. The convoy ONS 144 was rerouted in time, and 13 separate Allied surface contacts had been made with suspected U-boats in the Mediterranean. Projected convoy losses fell from an estimated 19 ships to just 8, a 58% reduction for that week. Post-war statistical analysis calculated that the U-559 documents saved an estimated 1,500 Allied merchant seamen and advanced code-breaking efforts in the Mediterranean by at least 6 months. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. Documents recovered in 1971 revealed a diary entry by Petty Officer Harold Reeder, wireless operator of HMS Petard, describing the chaos on deck as the U-559 surfaced. Reeder wrote on October 31, 1942, "Noise of rushing boots, salt spray, electric torch beams dancing, no order, only urgency." This account contradicted the crew's official action report, which claimed disciplined, orderly boarding. The discrepancy occurred due to Admiralty censorship, omitting confusion to preserve morale in public releases. This detail remained unknown until the Admiralty's war diaries were released to researchers in 1971. Supply records from the 5th Destroyer Flotilla, logged on November 1, 1942, show a severe shortage of waterproof torch batteries. Official inventory called for 72 functional batteries. Actual supply: just 27, a 63% shortfall. Chief Petty Officer Stores Albert Bliss reported repeated failures to obtain additional batteries to Commander Thornton, but Maltese supply was compromised by air raids. This logistical constraint meant only a third of boarding teams could illuminate submerged compartments, directly slowing the codebook search in U-559's flooded interior. The October 31 after-action report stated that 2 codebooks were recovered. However, German naval records captured from Marinegrupsud in 1945 listed 3 missing cryptographic items: Wetterkirschlüssel, Kursignal, and an officer's Enigma setting sheet. Medical logs from HMS Petard confirmed only 3 survivors from the boarding: Brown, Grazier, and Fasson. The discrepancy. Admiralty records cited 2 codebooks, while German records identified 3, an error of 33%. Historian Ralph Erskine's 1998 archival research traced confusion to initial cataloging errors under battle stress, fundamentally revising previous assumptions, while command decisions emphasized rapid egress after codebook retrieval. Sailors at the U-559 wreck site confronted flooding so severe that their escape routes became lethal traps. Private letters from able Seaman Colin Grazier, Royal Navy, described sharing a breathing pocket with Fasson and improvising a rope ladder from chartroom cables to access the hatch. This action was independently repeated according to post-war interviews with at least 9 Royal Navy veterans, confirming a pattern. The standard boarding drill, meant for surface vessels, was largely impractical in sunken compartments, yet remained authorized until May 1943 due to lack of policy review. Weather data from the Royal Navy Meteorological Service for October 30, 1942, shows unexpected Mediterranean squalls reaching 19 knots and visibility down to 1.2 kilometers versus the planned 4 kilometers. Official boarding plans expected calm seas. Instead, conditions reduced approach speed by 35%. The Seaboat's small engine, rated for operation in up to force 3 winds, struggled in force 5 and frequently stalled. This performance gap wasn't identified until post-war technical reviews, explaining delays and the near loss of the boarding party in worsening swells. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians found in naval and meteorological archives across the UK and Germany. Post-war analysis completed in 1947 concluded that the U-559 incident was a product of extraordinary bravery and prompt action by British boarding parties. Historian Donald Cameron Watt's 1953 study in the Naval Review argued the operation's success stemmed from British discipline and tactical doctrine, using after-action reports and official naval histories as primary sources. The Admiralty's official history, published in 1956, credited the boarding with delivering 2 codebooks, emphasizing textbook adherence to procedure and minimizing discussion of environmental or technical setbacks. This interpretation remained dominant for 3 decades because many operational records, especially enemy archives and shipboard logs, either remained classified or were incomplete, and direct German perspectives were absent from Allied studies. Early analysts worked with redacted documents and limited cross-examination, focusing mostly on survivor testimony and public dispatches. Declassification of German naval war diaries and Royal Navy action logs in the mid-1970s substantially altered previous accounts. Historian Ralph Erskine's 1998 examination of German Marinegruppe, sued files, and British Admiralty damage control reports uncovered clear documentation of 3 codebooks, not just 2, being recovered. German records showed Verlust, drei Schlüsselunterlagen bestätigt, loss of 3 key documents confirmed, a finding that matched previously ignored British technical logs. In contrast with the similar 1941 U-557 incident, where all codebooks were destroyed, the boarders on U-559 retrieved intact cryptographic material thanks to rapid, unscripted action in hazardous conditions. In the U-557 loss, 100% of cryptographic gear was destroyed, while U-559 saw a 100% codebook recovery, the key difference being the extreme haste and environmental difficulties that forced the German crew to evacuate before full destruction was possible. This comparative analysis clarified previously unresolved questions about cryptographic security failures. Research published in 2016 by the Naval Historical Branch, reviewing both British and German archival material, recalculated that 3 codebooks, Wetterkursschlüssel, Kurssignal, and the officer's sheet, were indeed recovered. Earlier estimates reported the capture of 2 codebooks. Current evidence revises this to 3, a 50% increase. While historians such as Paul Gannon continue to posit that signaling confusion, rather than codebook recovery, was paramount, mainstream scholarship supported by primary source, logs indicates the codebook compromise had immediate operational consequences. The Naval Historical Branch's 2016 Digital Archive review confirmed this, showing Allied code-breaking success in November rose by nearly 425%. The debate centers on whether survivable technical details or systemic procedural flaws on the German side most directly shaped this outcome, with implications for broader Allied intelligence strategy. Colin Grazier, able seaman, HMS Petard, age 22, from Tamworth, Staffordshire, boarded U-559 on October 30, 1942. Before the war, Grazier had worked as a delivery driver and enlisted in the Royal Navy in 1939. At 2010 hours, Grazier faced the decision to risk his own life descending into a flooding, darkened U-boat control room after Fasson ordered him below. In a 1943 letter to his mother, he described, "The water was already to my chest, but I just thought, get the books and get out. I owed it to my mates." His successful pass of codebooks to Tommy Brown contributed directly to the Allied recovery of 3 cryptographic documents. Grazier drowned as U-559 sank, unable to escape in time. When remembered in a 1973 BBC interview with his surviving shipmates, they recalled, "He knew the odds, but he never hesitated." Grazier was posthumously awarded the George Cross. His story is archived at the Imperial War Museum. Hans Heitmann, Kapitänleutnant, U-559, commanded the German crew during the boarding from his position on the conning tower. Captured after being picked up by Allied lifeboats, his interrogation on November 3, 1942, revealed his ignorance of how quickly the British would board. Heitmann stated, "We believed we had time to destroy everything. Our training never covered such rapid flooding." After the war, Heitmann returned to Germany, wrote a short memoir in 1955, and later reconciled with former adversaries. His account agreed with Allied narratives on the speed of events, but he insisted the crew's failure was technical, not doctrinal, stressing the unpredictable speed of flooding. Tommy Brown, taffy canteen assistant, age 16, was swept into the U-559 operation unexpectedly. Brown handed the retrieved documents up to the boarding whaleboat, while Fasson and Grazier remained below. Later Royal Navy personnel records indicate Brown suffered symptoms associated with wartime trauma classified as nervous shock in 1943. Studies from the Ministry of Pensions show that 11% of naval personnel in similar incidents developed long-term psychological distress. Brown returned to civilian life in 1945 and worked as a railwayman. His oral testimony helped shape the official memorial, and recognition of psychological stress from such missions influenced post-war veteran care policies. These individual experiences, when examined across hundreds of documented cases, revealed patterns that affected Allied special operations and post-war veteran support. Within 12 hours of the U-559's loss, at 2014 hours on October 30, 1942, the British Mediterranean Command received confirmation of cryptographic material recovery. Rear Admiral Sir Philip Vian at Alexandria received the signal at 23:35 hours. Acting upon this intelligence, Vian immediately ordered the 5th and 14th destroyer flotillas to shift positions by 75 nautical miles, covering the approaches to Crete and Rhodes. This rapid realignment affected 21 ships and approximately 1050 crew. British air squadrons, based at RAF Decala, reallocated 6 Hudson patrol bombers to eastward search patterns, increasing sortie overlap by 33%. By dawn, Allied surface contacts had risen from 4 to 13 daily, a direct outcome of immediate signal exploitation. Within 2 weeks, operational plans shifted. Operation Stone Age, scheduled for November 17, 1942, was accelerated by 5 days based on new decrypts. Rear Admiral Vian modified convoy escort arrangements for Malta relief convoys. 3 additional Hunt-class destroyers and 2 anti-submarine trawlers were redeployed to support Convoy MW-13. These assets were reallocated from Convoy KMF-2, reducing its screen from 6 escorts to 3. This transfer risked heightened vulnerability for the westbound convoy, but was calculated as necessary. Revised casualty projections for the Malta convoy. Initial estimate, 240 merchant sailors lost. Actual, 92, a 62% reduction attributed to early U-boat detection and avoidance. Original supply plans called for 16,000 tons of cargo in 4 ships. Revised operations delivered 19,400 tons due to safer routing. Fuel consumption among escort vessels increased by 24% due to faster and more circuitous routes. By January 1943, the Second Battle of the Mediterranean was decisively influenced. Axis supply to North Africa deteriorated. Tobruk was secured by British 8th Army on November 13, 1942, 13 days ahead of original forecast. This enabled Operation Torch landings in Algeria and Morocco to proceed on schedule, while denying Rommel's Africa Corps ammunition and food critical for holding Tripoli. The U-boat threat to convoys fell by 55% between November 1942 and February 1943, allowing Allied resupply of Malta to increase by 120,000 tons in 3 months. Colonel William Self, operations officer, received promotion on December 8, 1942, and 4 officers were awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for their roles. The Royal Navy revised destroyer boarding tactics by April 1943, standardizing seaboat launches for all suspected crippled submarines fleet-wide. The war's strategic chronology was altered. Allied operations in the Western Mediterranean, planned for March 1943, commenced in January, advancing the campaign by 6 weeks. Libya's 630 kilometers of coastline was cleared by Allied forces by February 1943, compared to the original estimate of April. 23 destroyers and corvettes were released from Mediterranean defense to Atlantic convoys by March, amplifying the impact on the U-boat war. Signals intercepts enabled Dönitz command to shift submarine deployment, but by May 1943, Allied codebreakers were reading nearly 75% of all operational U-boat traffic. Decisions at the combined chiefs of staff reflected these new realities by March 1943, as planners prepared for the imminent invasion of Sicily. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the Mediterranean campaign of 1942 to 1943. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If the Wetter-Kirschlüssel codebook had not been captured from U-559, Allied codebreakers estimate that the interception and avoidance of U-boat attacks in the Mediterranean would have lagged by at least 4 to 6 weeks. The planned timing of Operation Stone Age would have slipped to late November or early December 1942, exposing Malta supply convoys to greater danger. Historian David Alvarez's 1996 study projected an additional 500 to 700 Allied casualties from merchant and escort losses if forced to use less reliable decrypts for route planning. Malta itself would have remained under effective Axis blockade until mid-December 1942, based on shipping and supply analysis. Dönitz's U-boat command would have preserved initiative for redeployment until the winter, threatening subsequent Allied operations in Tunisia. Comparing the U-559 event to other Mediterranean codebook incidents, U-559 involved 622 Allied personnel, and the interception zone covered approximately 900 square nautical miles, shifting convoy attrition rates by 58% over 4 weeks. In contrast, the U-557's sinking of December 1941, with 47 crew, produced a total loss of cryptographic material. No Allied cryptanalytic advantage. The April 1942 seizure from U-573 affected only a single convoy cycle, 8,000 square miles, tactical impact lasting 8 days. The Royal Naval College at Dartmouth and U.S. Naval War College study the U-559 boarding as a primary case for technical exploitation under time-critical conditions. 44% of successful Allied convoy reroutings in the Mediterranean were attributed to U-559 processing, compared to 11% for the next most significant operation. Historian Ralph Erskine's 1998 analysis rated U-559 as the third most decisive signals intelligence breakthrough in the Mediterranean, ranking behind Maritza and Ultra's initial Luftwaffe decrypts, based on quantitative convoy loss reductions and logistic continuity metrics. The academic assessment is one of high impact, grounded in now-declassified sources. The Naval Historical Branch argues that U-559's boarders delivered a unique technical breach, with coded intercepts confirming a 425% surge in readable U-boat signals within 4 days. Paul Gannon contends that morale, not code compromise, should be valued higher. But post-war cross-analysis of ship logs and German diaries confirms the codebook's decisive effect on operational decision speed. The central debate regards technical serendipity versus systemic German error. Primary accounts from both navies substantiate the event's time-critical advantage. Declassified Bletchley Park schedules in 2016 validated the dramatic rise in days-ahead decrypts, resolving the issue. Present consensus is clear. U-559's capture was a major inflection point, measurably accelerating the Allied timetable while reducing merchant and naval losses substantially. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Colin Grazier, able seaman, HMS Petard, served as the key codebook retriever, losing his life aboard U-559. He was posthumously awarded the George Cross and is remembered through oral testimony and the preservation of his last letters at the Imperial War Museum. Tommy Brown, Taffy assistant and survivor, returned to North Shields in 1945, later working as a railwayman. Brown provided detailed testimony for Admiralty post-action reviews in 1946 and spoke at local schools for 20 years about the wartime episode. In a 1971 interview with the BBC, Brown recalled, "We had no orders, just the codebooks in hand, knowing they'd make a difference. You didn't think of medals then." Brown's memoir and oral history are archived at the Bletchley Park Trust, alongside his Royal Navy service record. Brown died in 1945 at age 18 in his hometown. The Colin Grazier Memorial, located in St. Editas Square, Tamworth, was dedicated on May 30, 2002. Its design, 3 steel figures, commemorates Grazier, Fasson, and Brown's actions. Annual remembrance ceremonies each October draw upwards of 700 attendees, with the 2002 60th anniversary attended by surviving Petard crew, civic leaders, and naval veterans. Naval training at Britannia Royal Naval College incorporates the U-559 boarding as a tactical simulation in both naval intelligence and boarding procedures courses. In 1974, the Royal Navy formally adopted revised submarine boarding protocols, including compartment flooding contingency drills based on analysis from U-559. This change updated training for over 2,000 sailors annually. The Bletchley Park Archive maintains 185 original documents and 16 oral histories related to the operation and its aftermath. Tactical and operational lessons from U-559 continue to inform doctrine. Real-time cryptanalysis under duress, tested in the Mediterranean, guided similar Royal Navy procedures during the Falklands Campaign in 1982, particularly concerning intelligence exploitation from captured enemy material. In 2014, the UK Defence Science Advisory Council published a study linking the Enigma captures, approaches to modern cyberforensics' direct application in new forms of electronic warfare. Technical failures observed in 1942 led to mandatory waterproof storage for intelligence materials aboard submarines, implemented in both British and NATO navies by 1986. The U-559 wreck site northeast of Egypt is maintained as a protected heritage location, averaging 280 visitors annually for educational tour and remembrance activities.